welcome to anyone who's just joining us. Feel free to go ahead and add into the chat what you're hoping to learn about today, what you're hoping to achieve today. And hopefully I'll be able to cover those topics off as we move through the session. Okay, so I just wanted to start off on this absolutely glorious, snowy day here in Vancouver, just to acknowledge that I'm honored to be working and sharing this webinar today from the territory of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam. So the format of the workshop, I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm going to talk about the unique process that we follow for development feasibility. I'm going to talk a little bit about development management, and then we'll have lots of time left over for questions. This is a 1-hour workshop. I like to finish a little bit early, give people a few minutes time back before you jump into your afternoon. So my presentation will be about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll have lots of time for discussion. So a little bit about me is that I finished my master's degree in urban planning 25 years ago, and I started my company, Channel Consulting, in January of 2020, just before the pandemic. So my company is in its 4th year. We've literally supported hundreds of projects over the course of the last few years. And I've been working with about 16 different subcontractors to make sure that we have the very best information. So my core focus, my unique gifts are really listening, connecting, and finding the truth to reveal those creative solutions. There's no easy sites left in the Lower Mainland, and we're in a housing crisis. And so what my focus really is now going forward is actualizing diverse housing in our communities. In terms of recent development feasibility experience, you can see that I've been working with all different types of projects. This is just some examples, but I've been working with family offices. I've been working with private developers, supporting joint ventures with significant REITs. I've been working on nonprofit projects of all types, housing, community infrastructure. I've been working on a port terminal project. So you can see a very diverse range of projects. I've done projects for Ingenium Canada and Fisheries and Oceans Canada for government clients. So a very broad range of groups and the City of New Westminster that we have been supporting over the last few years with Channel Consulting. And so everything that I do is really based in my values around achievement. I'm very energetic. I like to do everything it takes to get the outcomes, but really taking a relational approach and bringing that curiosity, asking a lot of questions, not asking yes or no, but asking how, and bringing that sense of humor when things get tough, which they certainly do with the tough sites that we have here in the Lower Mainland now. And all of that living those values has really helped me to build the trust to be representing a lot of different groups with development feasibility studies. So I'm going to jump in now to talk about the risks and opportunities in land development. So I think that we would all agree that these are the 4 main buckets that we need to work with when we're assessing development feasibility. So the first thing is, are you clear on your vision? Why are you doing this project? It sounds really obvious, but a lot of folks actually start with a bottom line cost basis rather than focusing on their vision. And if you know what you want, then there are many, many different paths that you can take to get to the result. So this is a really important piece. Are you clear on your vision? Number 2, are you clear on what the market will support? Number 3, are you clear on the requirements of land use approvals? This has become a major risk. And number 4, are you actively monitoring interest rates and inflation? And do you have a plan to manage your construction costs? So these are the 4 big pieces that we need to be watching out for. In terms of the development feasibility process that I have developed in my company, Channel Consulting, there's these 5 pieces, these 5 steps that we work through. And so the first step is really discovering. And so that's where I actually spend quite a bit of time at the beginning asking why this project? Why rental? Why not condo? Why are you looking to do this? What is the rationale for this business plan? So really discovering the vision and the values. We'll talk more about that as I move through this presentation, but this is a piece that I think is really important around discovery. And then strategizing and engaging. So talking, getting feedback on market conditions, getting feedback on local land use policy, and then starting to kind of run some of that feedback through the strategy around the financial model. And then unearthing solutions, talking with people, getting input to build those elegant solutions that are going to be workable for the site, for the approvals process. Developing that plan and to get the project through approvals and built, and then realizing that legacy. What is that legacy for your investors, for your community? What is the legacy? So in terms of discovery, I'm going to kind of share 2 sort of case studies of projects and what it looks like to do discovery. So I'm going to use a project that I did for a family office that owns some office buildings in downtown Vancouver. And so the first step was to really understand, what is your vision? What is your vision? And what we heard from them, so they came from Europe and we had a really beautiful meeting, and they shared some projects that they'd seen in London and other parts of Europe. And they said, our vision is an absolutely beautiful architectural aesthetic. This is very important to us. Our values are around creating a long-term, really unique building in Vancouver. And from a community perspective, we'd like to see some really interesting green building components. And we would like to see some really activated public spaces that interact with those green components. From a financial perspective, they wanted to have an income producing property long-term that would create legacy for their family. So understanding that with the discovery really helps me to understand kind of what I'm going to be looking for going forward into the strategize and engage phase. So I spend quite a bit of time listening and asking a lot of questions in the discovery phase. Another example of a different group that I worked with was a REIT that invests in market rental housing. And so they had a project and their vision was to achieve market rental housing. Their value was around IRR for their investors. In terms of the community, their project was located in a community that was really looking for housing for the missing middle, so middle income housing. From a financial perspective, they needed to have a break on the CACs in order to make the project work. And from a legacy perspective, they are looking to build out a portfolio in British Columbia of these income producing properties. So again, when it comes to values, they needed it to be market because of their IRR requirements. And so that meant that there wasn't an ability to deliver below market units in the project. So these are things that I need to know at the beginning in order that when we have those conversations with the city and other stakeholders, the architect, other key components of our project delivery, we need to understand kind of exactly what those values are. And then we strategize and engage. So a big piece of the strategize and engage is to understand the land use approvals process. And so for the most part, we're looking at the municipal approvals process, which I've got illustrated here, but there's also federal and provincial requirements that we need to watch out for if we're in proximity to an environmentally sensitive area, or if we're within 800 meters of a controlled access freeway, or if we're within the flight path. So there's a free workbook that's actually available on my website, channelconsulting.ca/media. We have a workbook there. And that workbook is an absolutely wonderful resource it's called the Land Use Study Workbook, to figure out exactly what the regulatory requirements are for a project. So I definitely encourage folks to use that workbook. There's also a training video there. But we always need to be watching out for, like, is the project compliant with the regional strategy, the OCP? Is it compliant with the zoning, with the development permit requirements? What does it look like in terms of the timelines for these permits and for the building permits? What is the servicing requirements? So this is a major foundational piece that really needs thoughtful consideration in relation to the discovery and your vision. And then in terms of unearthing solutions, when we unearth solutions, that's where we bring in the right technical resources at the right time. So sometimes folks bring in an architect really early. It's fine. It's just that if you find out that your vision is for a rental housing project and you have a super high-end architect, it might not be a fit. So it's really important to figure out, what is it that you want? What is your vision? And what are these strategies that you want to look at? And then from there, starting to unearth the solutions. Okay, so that may be, is there a lot of servicing that's going to be required for this site? Okay, great. We need to work with a civil right away to understand kind of what the servicing constraints are. Oh my gosh, there's traffic and parking issues in this neighborhood. Okay, we need to get to the bottom of that first. Are there environmental issues that we need to look at right away? Soil contamination, proximity to a creek, etc. Is this site really going to be challenging to build on because we have to do some development phasing because of some leasing commitments that are placed? Should we bring a GC in really early to understand how we could demolish parts of the building at different times? Are there some really incredible trees that we're going to need to work around? What about tax or legal issues? Are there certain considerations we want to address in regards to tax planning? Are there different encumbrances and legal matters that need consideration? What about the market? What's the right time for a market study? So after we've gone through that vision, we've strategized and engaged, then we're really into bringing the right team in place to navigate the complexities, address those very specific issues, and enable those shifts. So you may need to tweak and play with your business plan. You may need to move things around because of a really spectacular tree. You may need to play with your parking rate because there's a street parking issue in the neighborhood. All of these things you need to really understand. And then in terms of developing the plan, this is just a schematic diagram, but it's really to describe how we go through that development feasibility process, considering the values, considering the strategies, considering the solutions that are possible, and come out with, sometimes we come out with 8 different options on how things could move forward. And so we start out, okay, option 1, we have this site, we could do a condo development. It works out great financially, works out great with the vision. So going back to the example, I could give you an example of a family that I'm speaking to right now who's looking at redeveloping a shopping center that they own. They could go with a condo business plan, which financially could work out really well for them. In terms of vision, they could have a really high quality aesthetic. In terms of legacy, they could have a capital event, which takes care of their family for the next generation. But maybe it doesn't achieve some of the things that the community is looking for in terms of housing options. On the other hand, they could go with a rental project, which could work out financially, great for the community, create a nice income producing property, but maybe wouldn't be the design aesthetic that the matriarch of the family was hoping for. And then under the third option, maybe they have a mix of that works out really well financially. They have some retail, they have a little bit of rental housing, a little bit of condo, and it really achieves the vision. It's got a really interesting aesthetic. It benefits the community in terms of having some market rental opportunities. and then also creates a legacy. So we start to develop a plan and hone in on one plan, on one direction we're going to go. And then from that development feasibility, we're ready to realize. And so what that realizing looks like is, going through, following the development feasibility, going through and then spending the time on the design, going through the land use approvals process, which can take, 2 or 3 years. You have your zoning and your development permit process, but then you also have your building permit. In many places, we're looking at 1 to 2 years for the zoning process and 1 year for the building permit process. Then we've got construction, which depending on the project could be 1 or 2 years. So we're generally on like your typical project, looking at about 5 years from the time that there's a development feasibility study till the time that we're actually ready to go and build the project. So in terms of how I'm with my company, I'm supporting clients. As I mentioned, we've done like so many of these development feasibility studies over the last few years for all different types of projects, all different types of clients in municipalities across the Lower Mainland. And we're now shifting into expanding that service to include the development consulting as well, the development management. We're still continuing to do government relations. We have a port terminal client. We have a number of rental housing projects that we're working on and doing government relations for. We have the mentoring program that we launched last month. It seems like a while now, where we have people who are in that program who are learning how to do it themselves, which has been a really awesome program. And I've had just such fabulous feedback from people in the program about how much they're able to just do through learning from me through the mentoring program. And then we have these free resources that are available on the website at channelconsulting.ca/media, as I mentioned. And those workbooks, I really encourage people to use. If you have feedback on them, let me know. I'm happy to continue to update them. But those resources are there for you in order that I'm empowering folks to, I just really want to get information out there and help people, help the industry, help our colleagues in government, in planning teams where they're so understaffed, help by showing up prepared with really, really good information. So in terms of the testimonials, we have a testimonial from a client that we have done a few development feasibility studies for. That's Marcella. We have Eric, who's a member of the mentoring program. We have a family office. We have a major greenfield site in Exchange Business Park in Abbotsford. We have a nonprofit organization, the Dance Foundation, that we did a development feasibility study for last year. And then we have a planning director from Abbotsford. So I just wanted to spend most of the time really understanding what questions you have, if there's any ways that I can help support you, what you think about what I've just shared today. So I'm going to stop sharing the presentation and just open it up for conversation. What questions do you have? Anyone? You can put your question in the chat. You can just unmute yourself, whatever you feel most confident in. I've covered a lot of material at a very high level. So if there's anything that you'd like to do a deep dive into, now's the time. Yeah. Joseph, did you have a question?
Hi, Tegan. First of all, thank you for the presentation. Well done. Always informative, always useful. We have a new premier in the throne, and we have a budget speech coming out today. And it seems to me that the number one issue in British Columbia is housing in whatever form it takes. And I'm just wondering if, and certainly the issue over the last 4 years has been very cumbersome, arcane, difficult development approval processes. And the province has already brought in some strategies to help expedite development approvals. Do you know of anything coming down the pike that maybe we haven't heard of today in terms of easier development approvals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of things that we may hear tonight, I think we'll just have to, stay open. In terms of things that I'm talking with people about, what I'm talking with some of the municipalities about is about the pre-application process. And so what does it look like to actually do more of a completeness check? So there's kind of a number of different challenges that we have with the development approvals process. One is staffing. We just have such a shortage of experienced staff in British Columbia, and the sites are getting more complex. So what happens is we're spending so much time reviewing these preliminary applications. And so if we can put some of that work back onto the applicant, there's a huge opportunity there for both the applicant and for the municipal staff. So the idea of more of a completeness check. So rather than actually getting a giant letter, multi-pages back from the planning department on your pre-app, having an earlier screen that says, we don't actually have enough information here to review the application. And so this is what we need. This is what we need from you here. In order that we have, so it's almost like it seems like it's adding in an extra step, but it actually allows for a much higher quality of information to come in with a preliminary application and then with the application review. It also enables some leveraging of technology as well in order to do that completeness check. Okay. Chris, I see you've got a question in here. I like your advice on picking the right type of team. I have seen many examples of applicants hiring the wrong type of architect or engineer. It's a huge thing, actually. And actually, it funnels back into that area of doing this earlier completeness check, is where a lot of times inexperienced teams, but I would say 80%, and I don't know, Chris, if you would agree with that number, but of applicants are new to the game, or they're doing a project of this type or in this municipality or with this type of site for the very first time. And so they might hire somebody who worked on a different project in a different context and isn't actually the right fit for this type of project. So that's one of the pieces of advice that I always give my client right at the beginning of the development feasibility, to be very discerning about who you bring onto the team from an architecture and engineering perspective. Because if the engineer, like for example, if an engineering group just did a stormwater management study for this corridor, like hire them, right? And so spending a little bit more time to get the right resources in place. And in some cases, you might need a 20-page study, a transportation study. In some cases, you might just need a memo that says this is how the traffic works in relation to the studies that have already been done. So having that discernment around the team, there's a huge opportunity there. I'd also like to add that it's wise to reach out to the municipality one is developing in before one buys a property to get information on the land use designation, zoning, and even future land dedication requirements. Staff are always willing to assist in the early stages of projects to save applicants time and money. Yes, totally. So in terms of the development feasibility studies that I do, a lot of times I can get them done within 30 days. I can do them during a due diligence period. And to your point, it saves so much time and money, because at the time when the property is purchased, you're able to understand those risks and opportunities around servicing, around density, around those things. A lot of that information is not available on the municipal website. And my team can reach out to the municipal staff and reconfirm what we did see online. For example, I have a different project in Abbotsford right now, and we're looking at the rental housing density bonus. It's not clear on the website, so I just reached out to the staff today just to confirm what's happening with that. So that's really, really great. Okay, Mike, thanks for the presentation. Okay. Yeah, and ask for examples at the scale that you're working on. Yeah, I mean, looking for those comparable projects is really, really helpful. The other thing is that staff can often tell you, even though we did this, council didn't like it. I don't think with the new council, I don't think we would have the same success. Or, you know what, this council is a lot more progressive than the last council. I think you might have a better shot with this. So because of a conversation that happened 2 Monday nights ago. So having those conversations with staff certainly is incredibly empowering in terms of being well informed. Okay, is there any other questions or comments, feedback? Anything else? Any other parts of the process? Okay, yeah, one thing I wanted to mention is I was just talking about the development feasibility study and the importance of doing it during the due diligence period. But the other time, like there's so many other times to do it. So sometimes there's a joint venture that's being formed. And so it just is a great idea to have a third party provide that information so that it's, everyone's clear at the risks and opportunities at the outset. There's also times when families are getting ready to think about what they are going to do next with their portfolio, what they want to do for legacy. They may want to have a conversation as a family around long-term planning. That's another time that we do these development feasibility studies. We do them for government. We do them for actually even with nonprofit organizations. We've done them for investors, for sponsors. So this would be someone who's going to be writing a big check and they want to understand, is this project going to get built within my lifetime? And so that's a really great question that we are able to provide some feedback on to understand exactly how feasible this project is and that it will go forward on the how far their donation is going to go to bring it forward. Okay, what is your advice on holdout lots interrupting consolidation patterns and proposals? How would one proceed to develop ahead of them? Well, yeah, I mean, it's a free country. When you own your property freehold, absolutely, it's you have the right to be a holdout. And so it's a really difficult question. How would one proceed to develop ahead of them? I mean, it's a business decision. It's something that you need to sort out. Is there an opportunity for a phased development? Is there an opportunity to pursue some sort of density agreement where you're purchasing the density off of their property? Like there's a lot of different ways that you could proceed in having that difficult conversation with your neighbor, but ultimately they have the right to own the property. And so it's very difficult. Oh, thank you, Marcella. Yeah, so I'm happy to answer any other questions that anyone has in regard to all of the difficult things. I mean, we're a city that's now there's no easy sites left because we're redeveloping. We're at that kind of 50 to 100 year mark where we're really seeing a massive amount of redevelopment, and it makes it difficult compared to other jurisdictions, even other jurisdictions across Canada, like Calgary and other places where we have a lot more greenfield sites. How would you weigh cost value of underground parking structure into low-rise developments? How would you weigh the cost value of underground parking structure into low-rise developments? Yeah, so basically that's a question around the parking. You need to figure out what your parking rate is. You need to figure out what the geotechnical conditions are on the site. You need to figure out exactly what kind of FSR you're going to achieve on the site, and just do the economics on it and see how the financial model works, and does the financial model work. In relation, typically in Metro Vancouver, surface parking is, just because of the cost of land and the density that's available, it's not going to be economic. But it really just depends on what the parking rate is and how much density you have at the site. Any other questions? Okay, well, if there's nothing else, last call for questions. Okay. Oh, how many of my clients try to work in the ALR? That's a great question. That's a great question. I actually have done a few projects. I had 3. It's funny how things just come in groups. I had 3 projects in the ALR at the same time. I had a church that was trying to expand. And they were grandfathered use, but we were trying to figure out whether or not they could add some extra square feet. I also had a chicken farm that was trying to add a secondary dwelling. It's crazy. And then I also had the Exchange Business Park, which was a 140 acre greenfield site that was conditionally excluded from the ALR. So I have had projects in the ALR, but most of them are, really just trying to kind of work within the existing regulation rather than go for an exclusion. I had a project last year of a family that was looking to exclude part of their property. And it kind of went away. I think that when people realize the probability of success is very low, and I'm very candid with people about risk, they find a way to, they put it on the shelf, essentially. Yeah. Have you ever been advised on development proposals on floodplains, environmental hazard areas? How would risk be evaluated with investing into an area known with hazards? Oh yeah, great, perfect. Okay, so that's totally a matter of bringing in the right consultant at the right time. So in terms of floodplains, it could be a combination of geotechnical consultant as well as your qualified environmental professional. So in most cases, you'll have like a development permit area that is like a environmental hazard DP, or a DP for environmental protection. And so, yeah, it's wise to go ahead and bring in those consultants early to understand what the constraints are going to be around building. In some cases, like for an environmental protected area, you may be able to apply for a variance, and you may not, depending on what the situation is, and if there's just depending on what the issues are. And from a floodplain perspective, yeah, you may be able to construct at a certain flood construction level. You might not. Again, you're going to need to go back, look at any studies that municipality has done previously, and then based on what information is already available, figure out who the right consultant is, what the questions are that need to be answered, and then move from there. Just because there's a rule that says you can't do something doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means that you need to find out a way. How can I build in a floodplain? What can I build in a floodplain? How can I build it? And this is the thing that we had with the Exchange Business Park, in terms of the fact that we had a very sophisticated development group who wanted to ensure that they met or exceeded all of the environmental regulations. And yet we had a site that had a lot of environmentally sensitive areas. And so we needed to find out how we could proceed with some work in some of those areas, and then develop a best-in-class strategy on how we could do it. And so all of the costs associated with that, yeah, I mean, getting those studies done, getting the right consultants, information, there's a real lack of talent right now. I mean, I had a geotechnical report. It was due in October. The client was, really trying to get it for January. These consultants are so busy. These sites are so difficult, and there's more demand to be working in these types of areas than ever. Environmental professionals, they're so busy. So managing that risk, evaluating that risk, and getting that information in a timely manner requires making sure you have the right team in place. Any other, these are really good questions. I love these detailed questions. So please jump in if you have any other really specific question, or if you feel like, Tegan, that didn't fully answer my question, feel free, like, unmute yourself, put something in the chat. It's 12:40 now, so we have a little bit of extra time if you want to jump in. Okay, maybe no. Oh, we have another one. Great. What is your take on the 15-minute city concept? How does it affect the development community? Okay, great. Well, the thing about Metro Vancouver is the regional growth strategy has this network of centers concept. So we have village centers, town centers, city centers, and then we have our regional downtown. And so basically that regional growth strategy network of centers is quite similar to the 15-minute city concept, in that the fact that because of that strategy and the frequent transit network and the regional bicycle network plan that supports it, and pedestrian infrastructure plans that support it, we're moving toward that 15-minute city concept. We're still in some areas of the region, and the ALR being one of the reasons, we still have some challenges around the 15-minute city, because in some areas we have just such vast distances. But overall, I feel that our growth strategy, our regional growth strategy, which anchors our official community plans, is going to take us in the direction of the 15-minute city. The 15-minute city is that you can get all of your needs met within a 15-minute walk. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, and just going back to this question around the 15-minute city, is that one of the things that I really promote is positive advocacy. So understanding how your project aligns with the municipal vision, and that's how you're going to get, city council on board, the neighbors on board, etc. And so if you can really look at the official community plan and understand how your project is aligned with the vision that the community has, then you are setting yourself up for success. There's kind of this pattern that I see, very bottom line focused, which kind of, it's a bit tone deaf in terms of the context of the project. So the more that we can kind of, look at the numbers, because we're not going to do a project if the business plan doesn't work, but also looking at the purpose. Why are we doing this? What is the legacy? What is the long-term impact? So if there's one thing that we could take away from this session, I think that's the most powerful way to get the outcomes that we're all seeking. Okay, well, thank you all so much for coming. If you have any feedback, please share it with me. The live recording is going to be available. So please go ahead and share the live recording with others in your network if you think it'll be interesting to them. If you're interested in other workshops that I've done, they're available channelconsulting.ca/media. And yeah, if there's any other way that I can be helpful or supportive of you, please, of course, just reach out and let me know. Okay.
Thank you so much, Tegan. That
You're
was lovely.
so welcome.
Okay, see you later. Ciao for now.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.